Hello and welcome to Burnout, the weekly drag racing show. I'm your host, Wes Buck, and we are so excited to have you. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mike Galimi and Alex Taylor. How you guys holding up?
I'm doing good. Hunkered down here in New York. Signs of life is outside, so I'm pretty happy.
We're doing good in Arkansas, too. There's not much less going on than there normally is in Arkansas, so we're doing good here.
Well, it sounds exciting, guys. Well, hey, let's pull those belts tight and get ready for this week's episode of Burnout. Questions. So many questions. Questions from racers, from fans, from promoters and track operators, from members of the racing media, and everyone in between as a return to drag racing bears down on us. Up until this point, those questions have been fueled almost entirely by NHRA's fast-approaching rescheduled NHRA Gator Nationals set for June 5th, 6th, and 7th in Gainesville, Florida, just 36 days away from today. We have to ask, what will an NHRA national event look like post-coronavirus? Will fans be allowed? If not, which we see as highly likely, how can the NHRA survive without that ticket revenue? How will a professional race team's pit area look before, during, and after a run with social distancing guidelines in place? These are just a few of the questions running through the minds of the racing community as we approach summer. Earlier this week, however, a few of those questions were answered with back-to-back announcements from small-tire drag racing promoters Keith Barry and Donald the Duck Long as to their plans for the immediate future. During a live broadcast on Facebook, Barry, a world champion radial racer in his own right, announced that he would indeed be moving forward with his neighborhood block party turned drag race, Wostock, at Darlington Dragway May 12th through 16th. The party won't be the same as it has been in previous years, though, as he explained the event would be held without fans. Barry went on to say the event will feature 9 eliminators ranging from Radial vs. the World and Pro 275 to 3 Carolina Extreme Pro Mod categories and a host of no time and grudge racing. Of course, Wostock 2020 will be broadcast right here, live on Speed Video, so that fans around the world can catch all the action. Perhaps the most notorious promoter in drag racing history, Donald Long, followed up Barry's announcement with a Facebook Live video of his own from the familiar cab of his truck, making it official that he would indeed be hosting a 2-day COVID-8 shootout for Radial vs. the World and Pro 275 competitors at Ozzie Moya's Orlando Speed World Dragway the very next weekend, May 22nd and 23rd. Of course, Duck's COVID-8 will also take place sans fan involvement and be broadcast live on Speed Video. Circling back to drag racing's major league, the NHRA is set to release a public update on May 4th. We anticipate this update including the likelihood of the Gator Nationals actually happening in June, and if not, how that will impact their schedule moving forward. Paramount amongst concerns for NHRA brass and racers alike seems to be maintaining the integrity of the NHRA Mellow Yellow Drag Racing Series World Championships. How many races does it take to accomplish that goal? Again, a question that remains unanswered. These are wild times we're living in, and a drag race without fans in the stands certainly feels funny, but I believe I can speak on behalf of everyone here at Burnout in saying that we are thrilled to be going drag racing. While there are fans around the world excited to once again, someday, enjoy a weekend at the races, what the racing industry truly needs in this moment is simply racers racing. And that is the Week in Review. And now for my favorite part of the show, where we get to say what we think about stuff. This week's 3 big things. Again, we're going to talk about a whole slew of different subjects. First off, we're going to touch on electric drag racing. We're going to dive into a little bit of the cruise culture and the car cruises that are coming back on the scene here in the motorsports world. And we will bookend the conversation with a little bit of thoughts and feelings on what drag racing is going to look like on the other side of this coronavirus pandemic, featuring social distancing for the first time in the history of the known universe. Mike, let's talk a little bit about electric cars.
Well, I guess the big thing that sparked that conversation was Ford earlier this week announced the Cobra Jet is electrified for 2020. They unveiled it. They worked with a group that I haven't confirmed this yet, but it's rumored that they're the guys that worked on the Copo Camaro 2 years ago for Chevrolet Performance. The Cobra Jet sounds like it's going to be a lot more powerful. It's 1,400 horsepower or the equivalent of 1,400 horsepower. And they're looking at low weights at 170 miles an hour. It's something that the OEs are into, and I think it's something that's here to stay, whether you like it or not. It's going to be part of the market.
I'm out.
I think it's a positive for electric cars. I think it shows motorsports has always been tied to that. I think it's a common theme. I think, seating and drag racing, I think sports car racing will embrace it a lot more than drag racing.
See, here's my problem.
We always
with that. Sorry, with you saying that. So the title electric drag racing, like, can you imagine going to the track and you sit in the stands? It's silent. You don't have the rumble, the roar. You don't smell the gases and the fumes and see all this like that. I mean, I don't know. I can't call that. It's not drag racing at that point. I know it is, but like, it's not got the atmosphere of a drag race.
Welcome to adulthood, Alex, where you are now considered older, because there's going to be a whole generation behind us that as electric cars become more common, they're not going to know any different, right? This is going to be more common for a lot of younger. I don't agree with it. I'm like Wes. I mean, it's not my cup of tea, certainly not. But we can't deny that it's happening, and the OEs are pushing so strong in that market. You have to just, if this is what they want to do and they're going to have a drag race car, well, they're embracing drag racing, which is not a bad thing.
At least it keeps the sport alive, I guess. But to look at a positive.
I'm glad to see them racing them. I'm glad to see them racing them. And I, as a gearhead, I get it. And I'm all for anybody that's working on anything and trying to make it faster, improve its performance. I can buy into. I just wonder I just don't know how it's going to translate. Maybe even if people are more and more used to it, I just worry that it's going to, the end product, drag racing, is going to be so different that I don't know I've been surprised. We've seen people like Big Daddy Don Garlett's, really go after setting a record. And I'm not saying that fell on deaf ears entirely, but I don't know that it was really met with the celebration and adoration that maybe Big Daddy expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's new. People don't like to change, but I mean, you've had Hemi engines racing in nitro since the 60s. That hasn't changed, right? You could still buy small block Chevy. They haven't made a small block Chevy in how many years? Original one, and so I mean, it's not going to take over. They're not going to walk into a drag strip and be quiet. I mean, it's it'll never take over drag racing. There will always be that source of aftermarket parts to keep what we like.
Right. Speaking of older generations and kind of looking back, something I have to highlight that I am excited about is the fact that during this Corona, we're kind of seeing cruises start to come back. The cruise culture is something I obviously wasn't really a part of. I was too young, but I've heard so many stories from different racers. I hear my dad talk about stories about cruising Van Nuys and Whittier, when he was growing up every weekend. And I'm so envious of that. But lately I've been seeing, all across the country cruises. Like you look at Joe Barry with his 56 Chevy, a street car, just organized the masked cruise in Colorado. Like, do you guys think that's something that's going to stay like afterwards? I hope it is. I don't know, or is it just a Corona situation?
I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. And I was on the very tail end of like cruise culture, unfortunately. I got to do a little bit of it. But I mean, I traveled over the weekend from Texas back to Missouri. And there was multiple times that I stopped at a gas station and I saw like a whole slew of Harleys parked at a gas station or a whole slew of Jeeps parked at a gas station. And I thought, man, there is a resetting happening. There is going to be a silver lining to all this. And we've touched on this in the past here on Burnout, just how this coronavirus pandemic and the changes that promoters and race operators are having to make kind of lessen the expectations of the racing masses. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing, where there was a time where people weren't going to get together unless there was a prize at the end or there was something to win or something to compete for. But all of a sudden, we just want to hang out with our race car buddies and do race car things, right? We just want to hang out with like-minded people.
You have race cars on the street right now too. Like, I mean, street car, race car, that culture. It's cool to see them cruising. Like, that's awesome.
I think people like to congregate, right? People like to, be a community, and being that we're all locked in our houses with shelter in place in most states, I think there's that, well, I can get out and cruise my car and still social distance. And it kind of fits the narrative what we're all living right now for the past, 45 days, I think, at least in New York, it's been that way. And there's definitely a rekindling of the car passion for a lot of my friends, myself included. I've got my 07 Mustang and I'm taking out whenever it's nice. I'm seeing stuff on Facebook of guys cruising to Times Square at 2-3 in the morning, not a soul in sight, taking pictures in Times Square. And It's like, when are you gonna be able to do this in our lifetime? Hopefully this is the only time you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got goosebumps, man. I think it's the
Yeah.
coolest thing. And that's honestly something that I just hope that everybody is. This is a little bit of a refresher course, right, in why we do all this stuff. I think that there have been moments over the course of of recent history, I think, where, people get caught up in, hey, we race for money and we do this to try to, get sponsors or whatever. And everybody is kind of circling back to the fact that this is our hobby, this is our passion, this is supposed to be fun. And I hope that's something that maintains on the other side of the coronavirus, which I want to remind everybody watching Burnout will hopefully someday end. But before it does, I'm very curious, as kind of to wrap this week's three big things up, what exactly drag racing, especially the national event scene, will look like with social distancing in place. Mike, I'd love to get your take on this, knowing how deeply involved you are with the NMCA and the NMRA. Can we try to paint a picture, if you will, of what a national event or a major drag racing event is going to look like with social distancing in place?
I think it's going to be different for a lot of different groups, right? Like NASCAR is going to have its own set of challenges. NHRA is going to have its own set of challenges. Our style events, they will be easier to manage, I think, with local laws. And navigating locally has been extremely challenging. I know we've got a race coming up in St. Louis where it's 5 miles from from Missouri border, so it falls in Illinois. And it's like, well, these counties aren't affected, but St. Louis is opening up in 2 days, and so it's like, how do you balance that and manage it locally is in that state, and then the neighbor state 5 miles away.
Right.
I mean,
it's hard,
but
it
changes.
I can't help but see, and maybe I don't want to paint a bleak picture necessarily, but I can't help but close my eyes and see the grandstands at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis with red tape or caution tape, sectioning off areas. I mean, is that something? Is that a reality, guys? I mean, is that? Are 6 people here, 10 people there?
We've been, I've started seeing on going back to Facebook, but seeing people post the rules for this race that may be happening in this. And while it's super exciting to get back to the racetrack and I'm all about it, I think part of going racing is that personal interaction. And like, last week we talked about them seeing the fans in the stands. And so how long will people be willing to go to the race without that interaction? Like, you lose that human element to it almost. I don't know. I hope it doesn't stay like that long.
I think you have to make the best of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say, well, we're here racing. And that's step one,
For sure.
And I think you're going to look at, NASCAR is going to run on Wednesday nights.
Mm-hmm.
A primetime package on a Wednesday night, this could change what NASCAR is. Will they have more Wednesday night races? And I think you're going to start to see a lot of groups look at it and say, yeah, we can do this differently, and have this primetime package for TV, which is so valuable for NASCAR, but doesn't really affect us in drag racing. NHRA is going to look at things differently, and it's a crazy change. People are going to have to change with it and adapt and figure out a better way to do it.
It's an interesting time, guys, and I appreciate you guys once again flexing on them and showing them what we're trying to do, showing the world what we're trying to do here on Burnout with this week's three big things. Digging into the archives a little bit for this week's reaction time, got another Harvey wallbanger there for you guys. I don't know about you, Mike, Alex, but what I really miss, I hate to see crashes like this. I hate to see bang up stuff, but man, I miss screw-blown 8th mile outlaw door slammers. Like this, it almost seemed like the ADRL and PDRA's Pro Extreme divisions were just surefire action on the drag strip, as you see here with Neil Wante as he gets a little out of the groove, bounces off one wall and into the other. Fortunately for Neil, he was able to walk away from this fairly terrifying crash at Memphis International Raceway. Don't you think do you miss at all, Mike, Alex, the outlaw door slammer world that we used to see where there was no rules, lightweight cars, crazy, anything goes?
It's being that class racing has taken a front seat in my life, professionally. The no rules, like what can this guy think of? Twin screw blown cars set on kill or just sound incredible. And you don't get to see that very often anymore. A little bit in Radio versus the World, but I know they're, try and balance it out. But this was like one weight rule and just whatever you want with doors. And that was always fun to watch. And you get scenes like this where somebody loses it and bounces around a bit.
Alex, was this like completely before your time?
I was gonna say I can't speak on the remembering it necessarily. Forgive me there. However, I mean, I think thinking of the no rules aspect and kind of like that outlaw almost vibe. I mean, for everybody, it's like an innate inside feeling that just kind of gets you excited. And then to speak on the action, like in these photos, like you hate to see it as a racer, you hate to see it as somebody that loves it, but I mean, fans love it. That's the bad part. Like there's a part of them that's the part that draws them in. I don't.
It's tough, but I honestly think that if all of this was just perfectly safe and nothing bad ever happened and there was no scary moments like this ever, I mean, look at bull riding. Everybody knows that we're a hair away from something really bad happening, and that's what draws everybody in. The danger is what draws people in. And again, man, I'm always blown away by the courage of the men and women that are willing to climb into these things. And I really do look back with a lot of fondness on the days of those unlimited cars. Like the term unlimited is not used very much in drag racing. And at the height of the ADRL, the American Drag Racing League, and early on with the Professional Drag Racing Association, it was great to see these guys, many of them very well resourced, able to go out and just do whatever they wanted to do, right? No holds bars, nitro, titanium, whatever it took to go quicker and faster.
It was the closest our generations had to the 60s, right? You hear some of the older guys talk about, Top Fuel back in the 60s where they didn't know what was going to happen. They could do what they wanted. It wasn't so regulated like it is today. And it was our glimpse into that. In a modern version of it with the pro mods that I know Wes and I love so dearly much.
Rules ruin everything. No, and that's it for this week's Reaction Time. Well, this feels like a big deal, guys. I don't know about you and the rest of the Burnout audience out there, but I would argue that Garrett Mitchell and his alter ego, Cleetus McFarland, is one of the true phenomenons, perhaps the most significant phenomenon we've ever seen in the automotive world or car culture in general. Garrett, how are you, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me out today.
Yeah. How about that intro?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty intense intro. I don't know if I can live up to what you said, but I'll say it.
No, I think it's true, man. And I guess we'll just dive into this. Like, well, for one, did you ever anticipate this, what was kind of a joke, right? Like a running gag turning into this otherworldly 2 million followers known around the globe? Did you ever envision this? Was this in the back of your mind at all?
I definitely know. There's no way I could ever envisioned it. It was kind of my dream to be able to do what Kyle Loftus with 1320 Video was doing at the time and have my own channel one day. But I never imagined I'd be a professional redneck named Cleetus McFarland, and that goes all the way back to Rocky Mountain Race Week. Actually, like the first time I met Alex, which is cool. It all sparked from that day, that week. So pretty crazy.
It's amazing, man. Where does we've seen Cleetus McFarland do Cleetus and Cars, a spin on Cars and Coffee. We've seen you do Demolition Drag Racing. We've seen you do, Burnout Contest. Where do you look? Is this all just in your head, or do you look around at other motorsports or other events and draw inspiration?
I mean, it's tough because, there's definitely things I take from certain events. Every event you go to, you learn something new. It's like, when we went to Australia, we learned about how to do the burnouts, and, they're, kind of adapted off of their show. And then you go to Streetcar Takeover, and I've seen how they, drag race and put on that part of the show. I've definitely learned from different events and different styles, and I love going to new events. I raced in the first race week this year. Never knew there was so much that could be a part of a drag race, like drag week or race week. So, I mean, every event we go to is super eye-opening, and, we try and learn as much as we can and, give credit where it's due. Streetcar Takeover and Summer Nats would definitely be the two events I would say, get the most credit for helping me get Cleetus and Cars, to where it is today.
So let's go look at Rocky Mountain Race Week. I was a part of it, so I have to ask this question. But I watched your triumph this year with Leroy as you competed in the stick class and then went on to win it. Looking back at it from your perspective, because I know mine, looking back at it from your perspective, what is that week like? What is it like to go through the week and then to get the win, and just the whole experience in general?
I think that the deal with a drag race, right, is like, there's the weekend races, which are amazing. I love them. But the more you put into something, and then win, it's just so much more worth it. So I've won drag races, and it was just not even comparable to winning our class at race week, because we had just, changing transmissions in parking lots and pouring down rain. You guys dealt with it too, Alex. So, like, just battling, and then it all coming down to a win after 7 days of grueling, just torture driving through
No sleep.
Colorado thunderstorms and yeah, no sleep. I edited videos every night for the channel, so we were actually live every day. We had a video up, and we were on trending the whole week. So it was insane. But I mean, we were in storms in a car with cardboard body panels that we built at a gas station, and it was just the most surreal thing, like with all these race cars cruising, and to win it with all our friends, and see you guys win it. It was definitely unreal, like super eye-opening, that there's so much more to a drag race if you are willing to put yourself into one of these other races, like a race week or drag week.
So you've obviously been diversifying with a lot of the burnouts, Freedom 500 and that sort of stuff, but drag racing still keeps pulling you back in. I know you've got some plans with your red Corvette. Where are you guys headed with that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're trying to run a 7 this week. So we're just working on Ruby right now, which is our car that I accidentally, the story with Ruby is I bought her sight unseen on an auction website, Mannheim, and I was super pumped because I got this smoking deal. And we showed up the day of, and someone had taken the 6.2 liter out and put a 5.3 liter truck motor in it. And so, we were like super bummed at first. Then we posted the video and everyone loved it. So we built this red Corvette now. Her name's Ruby, and we're trying to run our first 7-second pass in it this week. So it's got a big single turbo that's higher than the roof line of the car, so it's just stupid fun,
And this one, you didn't cut the body off this one for some who aren't.
This one's got the body. Okay. No hood, but it's got the body.
Okay.
I love it, man. It's like these, it reminds me of like the Rat Fink hot rod stuff, that it's none of this stuff is supposed to work, but you guys make it work, man. And speaking of making something work, you blew my mind. I'm not totally surprised, but you made headlines earlier this year when you unleashed or announced a gearhead paradise with the Freedom Factory in Florida. Can you tell us a little bit about A, how that whole thing came to be, and B, like, where do you see it going in the future? Because I mean, now you're holding pay-per-view circle track races. You built a burnout pad. I mean, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, we're the guys who bought a abandoned racetrack right before a pandemic. So we, the way it kind of came about, honestly, is I had seen the track. It's right next to Bradenton Motorsports Park, which is 5 minutes from my house. And I had seen it, and I knew about it, and I was at dinner with Victor, the owner of Bradenton Motorsports Park, and I was like, man, like, I can't keep making these videos where we're just, ripping in the road or, doing donuts in the circle out in front of our shop. Right. It's like, what if, we bought this circle track and it turned it into our spot for our shenanigans. And then it just like, once that thought made it through my head, so many other ideas poured in, like having the Freedom 500, building the burnout pad in the center so I can actually host our own events there. There's so many possibilities. At first, I thought I needed a drag strip. I was going to try and seek out a drag strip. But it's, that's a pretty one-faceted facility. It actually turned out better that a circle track, even for drag racers, it just worked better for us because, we do drag race and we've got Bradenton Motorsports Park, but then we've got the Freedom Factory now where we can just hoon and do anything. I mean, like there's jumps, there's whatever you want to do. You can do it there. So it worked out really good. And, we did what we had to do to make the deal happen. And the owner worked with us and we made it happen. And like, I thought the announcement would be big, but like people really got behind it. So that was cool. It was a risky situation.
It was awesome.
Well,
sure.
Dude, I mean, for all of us, like in drag racing, we contend with this all the time that it's like this heartbreaking thing to see a facility close or, find out that some racetrack's going to close down. So it's such a change of pace to hear that somebody's buying a even if it's not a drag strip, a motorsports facility and reopening it and saving it, right? I mean, it's a crazy thing. And I thought about that too, that it probably plays right into your hand that you can go out there and cut donuts and rip around the oval track and all these different things. Because I've often thought about how you're tasked when you create content for your YouTube channel with, like you said, going ripping up and down some in Mexico, right? And so now you're able to do all those same things, but in America.
Yeah, exactly. And YouTube is like, tightening down their guidelines every day. You know what I mean? So some of this stuff is just getting out of hand, and we don't want to get in trouble. We want to do it in a safe spot. So we're like, freaking hell yeah, brother. We'll just get our own spot to do it.
It changed the game too for anybody else, like, coming into the segment, right? And into, if they want to be another channel now, it's like, well, this guy's got a track over here. So you definitely changed the game for a lot of people. And I'm sure there's other content creators out there looking like, what else is for sale?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said too. Like, I always try to show to people, like, we're so committed to doing, I want to be a YouTuber as long as I can be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, they'll blow up on YouTube, and there's no problem at all with cashing out and making your money and moving on to something else. But like, I'm here to prove to these guys, our people who follow us, like, we're so committed that we freaking bought a racetrack because we plan on, we're going to do this for as long as we can.
I think that's so important.
We're in it,
because you see through the fakeness of the others. Like, you can see through like what their actual motives are. So it's like really cool to see, like, that your motives are intentional to be in the car world. It's not just because it's, like you said, like a quick cash out. Like, you have a passion for what you're doing. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, we're in it.
Do you think, Garrett, that there is for the most part like an expiration date for the typical YouTuber? I mean, is that something that crosses your mind? Like, okay, this can only, because I'm sure like reality TV show stars kind of contend with that, right? That there's a life cycle to all these things. Is that does that weigh on you?
I think there's a life cycle to every business.
Agreed.
And it's one of those things. It's like, I don't know when or where we're at in our life cycle, but I just push forward every day, hoping to keep continuing towards that peak. You know what I mean? And it'll come one day. There's just, the fact of the matter is, it will come one day. And we have we have a pretty decent overhead now. We used to always run really skim, but we've financially mapped out what it's going to look like in a couple years on a couple different scenarios, and we plan on just sending it for as long as we can, like, and there's points where we'll have to pivot, just like any business too. Like, in YouTube, if you have to change your content, turns out people love construction content. We just constructed a burnout pad that's 220 feet by 190 feet out of the track, and like, who knows if one day I'm doing way less car stuff and doing more construction stuff. Like, we could buy another track and fix it up. It's like, luckily it's such a universal platform that we're going to try and keep our life cycle alive as long as possible. But yeah, one day,
well, and
it certainly will shut down.
It's really solid advice for anybody out there, that you have to be in 2020. It feels like being nimble and able to change and pivot and adapt has never been more important, man. And wise words from the one and only Cleetus McFarland. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us today. We know you got a lot of stuff going on, man, and we appreciate you taking some time away from cutting donuts to shoot the breeze with us here on Burnout.
Hey, thank you guys. I'm excited to be on the show and talk to 3 people that I know pretty well. So thank you guys, and keep it up.
How about being joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Rickie Smith? Ricky, how are you, buddy?
Great. Everything. No temperature.
No, that's a good sign these days, man. I gotta ask, what's a guy like you who's notorious for his work ethic, well known for staying busy around the clock? What are you doing with your time right now?
Wes, this is, I'm 66 years old. Like you say, I'm just used to working. I open this shop every day. I'm the only one that's got a key to open this shop. So Chad don't show up. Nobody gets in this shop like you. I'm here every day. And it's about to run me nuts, man. I mean, normally you get used to it in the winter because you're going to have a month or two slow. But you had the winter and this. It's just about it. I don't know. It's a little bit of depression for me, to be honest.
I can relate, unfortunately.
Let's talk then a little bit about drag racing, or the short season that we experienced. I know something I'm personally excited about, while I don't know all the in and outs, is the introduction of centrifugal superchargers into NHRA. I have a soft spot for that. So what is your thoughts on how NHRA has incorporated them, and then kind of the thoughts of going forward? I know it's been a short season, but...
Yeah, it's hard to say yet. I'm not against bringing anything in new, I mean... they really showed their butt down there at Orlando, and the weather was stupid, too. But still, I mean, I don't care if the weather's good, bad, or whatever. What if we'd had an NHRA race at Gainesville and it was 65 degrees? Look what they'd have done to us. It's been ridiculous. So I know NHRA took a close look at it, I'm sure, and they're just waiting here. But, all we can do is let NHRA do their thing, and that's kind of what I relied on. With my sponsor, I told him, guys, I'm going to be as competitive as anybody with a nitrous car, but it's up to NHRA to keep me competitive, when they're making the rules. So I'm just leaving it up to them. But the centrifugal thing it's a pretty neat deal. I got nothing against it. Like I say, I mean, it's fine. But the only thing I look at is here, and I want to say it right quick, is if you're going to bring something in new like that, and I hope NHRA will see this, they shouldn't have been able to qualify no better than probably 8th or 9th, period. End of deal. You want to bring a new category in, they should have not have been able to qualify in the top active field. Run the first year, do what we've all done for 20 years, develop your deal, and struggle like we had to. And if you want to stay with it, then stay with it and run it. And I'd have been fine with that, and I hope that's what NHRA will look at.
Because what you're referring to for the uninitiated is basically at the Drag Illustrated World Door Slammer Nationals the first weekend in March in Orlando, Florida. Justin Bond came out with that Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro, brand new ProCharger car that I know they had been testing quite a bit, but goes off the trailer basically and sets the NHRA Pro Mod record with the ProCharger deal. And that's so I see exactly what you're talking about. And you're right, Rickie. A lot of these combinations, they've struggled for years at a time. Right? I mean, seasons at a time, they've had to go pick at it and pick at it and pick at it. And I, too, am curious how the NHRA is going to respond to that, because there were NHRA tech officials on the property. So this didn't happen in a vacuum. They had to know and see what happened. And I guess my honest belief was that the NHRA may have put weight on them before we even started in Gainesville. That didn't happen. Obviously, they had bigger fish to fry, with which ultimately postponing the race due to the coronavirus. But I would be shocked if there's not a significant weight or performance penalty of some sort put on those cars in the very near future. I mean, it could be problematic. It's as good. Would you argue, Rickie, that it's as good right now, the parity and Pro Mod prior to the ProCharger, that it's been as good as we've seen it in a while? Or
it was pretty close. I mean, and a lot of people's talked, I don't care, other sponsors and all. I mean, I won the race at St. Louis, and we all saw that. I absolutely was not the fastest car there. Stevie outrun me all day long on Sunday, and I got the weight penalty. Okay. Yeah, I didn't have to put the whole 75 in, but I had to put 35 in. Well, okay, you done slowed me down another 100, and you already had me covered 100.5. So all I said, let's say the turbo cars were maybe 100 behind me, 100.5. All right. So if they'd have put the weight on me like it did, put 50 pounds on the blower cars, now I think we'd all been really, really close to being damn near within 100 of each other all the time. That would have been the perfect scenario to keep this stuff right. Now you got the ProCharger thing, so that thing there, again, I'm like you. It don't matter if it was cold, hot, or whatever. Yeah, okay, we leave that cold weather. Let's just take, for instance, they're going to slow down to 10, okay? We're going to slow down, whatever, 500s. Okay, they had us outrun 4 500s. So you should have done something. I don't give a damn. It's going to get bad weather. They're going to slow down. We are too. But, I have not bitched at NHRA about it or anything. I'm just I'm over that kind of. I just want Ned and the group to get together and keep us all competitive and let us race so we keep a sponsor. I mean, if I can't stay competitive with this nitrous car, I'm not going to keep Strutmaster. And we need nitrous cars out there. I know Stevie's got the car that I crew chief for Belushi and all that. They got all that down there. And I told Ned, I said, Ned, maybe Stevie outruns me 100, maybe 200 sometime or another with that car. But you're going to see the heads off of it every 4 or 5 runs. When he can make 7, 8 runs like I can and outrun me 200s, then okay, then I need to get my act together. But can I run 100 better sometimes, 100.5? Yeah. But I'm going to have a heads off of it every 2 or 3 runs, and I can't race like that. There's not many people out here can do that. So you just got to keep that stuff under control. And And that's all I ask is just keep us under control, you know.
There's a little bit of an identity crisis with that, right? Like we can't pretend that these pro mod teams are prepared to have 10 crew guys, because if at this rate we're going to have it looking like a Top Fuel or Funny Car program pretty quickly if we haven't already.
Right, absolutely. You got to keep, if you don't keep the cost down on this class, if you let this thing keep going, you won't see 16 cars there. You'll be lucky to see 12, 14. You might see 16 coming and know some others ain't coming just so they can come and qualify. But what is that? I mean, the good racers, the top 10, 12 cars, we're not coming just to qualify. We're coming to try to win a race. So you just got to watch this deal, and you can hold the cost down if you keep up with everything that's going on. You know, just keep the parity down on it and keep us down there. I mean, like I say, I've bitched so many years about this stuff, and I finally proved to myself that I knew what was going on with the turbo cars was going on. I proved that. We don't have to talk about it no more. I showed it to NHRA. I showed them all the data off of my car, not Belushi's car. So all that's over with. I proved without a shadow of a doubt what was going on, and that deal's over with. So why did all them cars switch? Way I look at it, you took your two best customers from turbos to Pro Chargers. Well, if you didn't know, now let's just be smart about this and educated about this a little bit. If you didn't know, some common sense, okay? If you didn't know 110% that you were going to be way, way competitive with that Pro Charger, how could you talk your two main customers, Frigo and Jose, from leaving turbos to go to Pro Chargers? You can't do that. You can't do that to your customer. So they knew 150% that they were going to be competitive. I don't care if it gets hot, cold, what, they're going to be top running cars. And that just ain't right for the people that has dedicated 20 years to doing this stuff to get their performance up. It just ain't right. So, like I say, I'm talking to y'all about it. You asked the question, but Ned, the NHRA Tech people, I just asked them to please jump on this thing, and they should not, unless they got lucky by breakage or some big hole shots. Them cars should not be able to win a race this year, period. Can't help it. So that's up to NHRA.
So NHRA is, obviously, Pro Charger and the turbo stuff is one thing, but they've also given you guys, the nitrous racers, the bigger engines. Where do you stand on going from the 903 to a 959? Is it an option? Is it the cost go up, not just to purchase it, but to maintenance it? Where are you at on that?
That's a problem. We don't know. And I built two brand new 903s, two brand new 959s this winter. 4 brand new motors I built this winter. I got rid of all of my Pro Chargers, turbo stuff, and just switched everything around, and was capable of building 4 complete brand new motors, selling them other stuff. All right. I wouldn't even run the 959 with that weight they had on it. They took 25 pounds off of it. I'm going to go test it. I would have done tested if all this virus stuff hadn't happened. I want to go test it now and see where it's at. But probably what it's going to do is run pretty much equal with my 903 now. And they didn't do this for me. They done this for the PDL guys, and a lot of people have 959s. That's what they done this for, not for Rickie Smith. So I just want to go see now how it does run. But the problem is, I know how many runs I can get on rods with a 903. I know how many runs I can get on the crank with 903. That took a year or two of keep pushing, see till you blow the front end off, till you figure out what's going on, magging the cranks, all this, But anyway, I know where that stuff will go roughly. Now you got to go through that whole process. I will to run quarter mile, because I see all those guys that got 959, basically they're 8th mile cars. So you don't know how many runs you're going to get on this stuff. So you got to pull the motor down. You got to mag the crank, which we don't have to do no more, a lot of times. So that's just between the test deal and pulling this motor down like that, because most time we pull a motor down, we jerk 8 piston rods out of it, ball on it a little bit, put it back together. Now you got to pull it all the way down, get the crank out of it, wash it up, go do it, on the block while you got it down. It's just a lot more expensive deal, than just our normal maintenance. So I'll at least have it there if I can run it, if I need it. But the 903 is more realistic for me to run because I know how many runs I can run.
All right, Mr. Tricky Ricky, you earned the name for a reason. So as we wrap this interview up, we got to know, what tricks do you have up your sleeve to deal with the shortened 2020 season as we move forward?
Well, it looks like to me you're just going to have to run hard as you can, because we could get cut back to 10 races. We could get cut back to 9 races. But I think if they run, we'll probably get at least 9 or 10 of our races, and we only have to run 12. So we're going to get most of our season in, but still, you cut it back to 10 races. That's a short time to try to win a championship. And if you have 1 or 2 bad races, you pretty much put yourself out of the championship deal. So people look at me, if I don't win a championship, I had a bad year. And that's a tough deal. I talked about this a year or 2 ago. Golly, people, I want to win this championship as bad as y'all do. But if I don't win a championship, it don't mean I had a bad. There's a lot of people who would kill to be able to win 1 or 2 races a year like I do, or be in the top 3 or 4 running for the championship. That's all I can ask for, is let me be in the top 2 or 3 at the end of the year, have a chance to run for that championship the last 2 races. And that's all you can really ask for out here, because this world is competitive. And I won a lot of championships. So don't say I'm washed up just because I can't win a championship.
You have set the bar extremely high, Ricky. There's no doubt about it, man. I have argued many times you're the best to ever do it, and we certainly appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon on Burnout, man. So thanks a bunch for joining us. I'm sure we will be talking a lot soon, and I hope at the drag strip sooner rather than later.
Oh yeah, Wes, and I got to say, just give me Lucas Oil, Strut Master, Chip Lofton at Strut Master. I just talked to him yesterday. He guaranteed me if we go back to racing, our money's going to start coming back, and I know we didn't get our payments, and I don't expect to get it. We're not racing, but everything is good there. I even talked to him about next year. If Strut Master is racing next year, Rickie Smith will be here 1 more year for sure. So we're going to try to blow this thing out. And if I do announce next year as my retirement year, which if I do, it'll at least give me a whole season to renounce that. I hate to do it right now, and I don't know if I'm going to get 2 races, 5 races, or any races. So
plus, you'll probably change your mind.
Well, once we announce it,
repeating myself on that one.
I want to announce it this time if we do, and I'm leaving this up to Chip. I told Chip, this is up to you. You tell me if I'm going to race 2 more years, 1 more year. This is going to be up to you, because I'm ready to go. When you're done with me, I'm ready to go. Okay, I've served my purpose over here. God's been good to me. So you tell me, because I want to announce it at the first year so people know all year long, this is my final season, and this is where I'm going.
Well, God's been good to you, but you've been good to drag racing, Ricky, and we appreciate all you do, putting on a show year after year, being an electrifying personality. It's a really good thing for the sport of drag racing, and we all very much appreciate it, buddy. So I'll be talking to you very soon, okay? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wes.
So our next guest this week is Raleigh Miller, General Manager of the NMRA and NMCA sanctioning bodies, a guy that I work with daily in my regular job. And Raleigh, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Good to see you guys.
So, obviously you and I have been working on a lot of stuff with the COVID-19 stuff. Can you just kind of explain to some of our viewers what challenges you faced, just what's going on, changing dates and states by state? It's been a challenge. Kind of explain what you've had to jump over on hurdles in the past few weeks.
It's a couple of things. First off is just trying to get these first 2 or 3 events scheduled. Every state has got a different mandate, and that's ever changing. Really, it changes daily, not weekly, but daily. And the political environment is impacting that quite a bit in each state. So we're working with our tracks. I'm on the phone with all of our tracks almost daily, if not every other day. Dealing with those situations. some of the things that we're having to work through right now are probably the biggest is how we arrange social distancing at these first two events. We're going to have to do that. You got to realize that as a promoter and jump into that and address it on the racer and crew side, but mainly on the fan side, and how you deal with that. And then we're also, I'll tell you, the other big one for me is our partners, our track partners, staff, and our staff, and protecting them in this situation, especially in the next month and a half. As we get through this, we've got to acquire PPE for those guys, make sure they're able to do their jobs, whether it's registration or tech or ticketing, where that interaction is. And but we don't want to take that stuff away from our medical providers either. So coming up with guidelines on how to do that and coming up with that equipment for our folks and the tracks folks is a big importance for me right now, one that I'm working on.
I know you're having to manage a lot of moving parts right now, and there's lots of changes being made, as you're saying. How are racers reacting to the changes? Have you got feedback from them yet?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. We interact with our racers when we get ready for an event via email and phone calls. Finding out who all's coming and preparing parking grids for that kind of stuff. And most of our racers just want to go race. They're ready to get out there. Now we do have a few that have contracted the virus recently and are dealing with that on an individual basis, and we're praying for those guys and working with them and hoping for the best for them. But the majority of our racers, the one comment I hear is, when can we go racing? When are we getting to the race? They're ready to get out of the house.
Awesome. Good.
Do you think it's the overall uncertainty and the kind of moving target from state to state that's been the biggest problem with trying to move forward with any of this stuff, Raleigh?
It is. It's one of the biggest problems I've seen is and had to deal with is the state we're working with will work out a plan, and then a state north or south or east or west of it around it will make another decision that'll impact that state, and it'll cause it's a chain reaction, and we'll have to deal with that. Today I might have a plan all in place. Friday that may, it's out with the wind, and I got to start all over from scratch and figure that out. So that is one of the biggest ones, Wes.
Right. So looking at the changes that are happening now and how you're having to go about adjusting these events, do you think that's going to change the event promotion industry, obviously for the rest of 20, but looking forward past this year and past the virus? You think it's going to change how that promotion looks and the event planning looks? I
do. Like you said, immediately it's really changing how we do it, because we've got to adapt, right away once we make the decision to have an event. So it shortened that time frame in these first couple of events for us. In the long term, we've got to look at, what is this virus and its impact going to do to us in the fall, and the predictions they're making for the fall, and how do we promote that? That's something I know Mike and I work on daily on our side. And then as we get into next year and how do we address that going into the new year? You got to put a plan together, and you got to be able to adapt and move that around. And it's something that you don't normally have to do with promotion. Usually you can set a plan in place for promotion, you'll get it. Now you're gonna have 2 or 3 plans where you can adapt and move around.
Well, and what do you think about just the fact that no one really knows what this stuff's going to look like? Like, we don't know what an NMCA event is going to look like after this. We don't know what an NHRA event's really going to look like after this. And I just wonder, for the ticket buying fan, for a long time, they've known what this experience is going to be like, right? They're going to go, and there's going to be a midway, and there's going to be, a car cruise, and they kind of know what to expect. No one knows what to expect moving forward. And I can't really figure out if that's going to be, on some levels, a good thing, because people are going to want to go find out, just the inherent curiosity of humans, or if it's going to be I'm just staying. I'm just so concerned, to be honest, that no one knows what these events are going to look like moving forward, and how is that going to impact all of these promoters, not just the NMCA and the NMRA, but I think we can agree one of the most important things for the sport of drag racing is successful promotions. We have to have these event organizers, these sanctions, these series, the smaller promoters, we have to have them being successful. And I don't know what anyone knows what that really looks like. I mean, we don't know if it's going to be selling tickets or what, right, Raleigh?
Yeah, that's a great point, Wes. I mean, immediately for your huge events, your NHRAs, your NASCARs, they've got their challenges. They may not be able to have fans because they can't. They have to restrict that fan group to a certain number, a certain percentage. I consider ourselves a PDRA, some of these other venues, a mid-size event, where we might be able to come in and say, okay, we're gonna come into, let's say, St. Louis, and we're gonna have 30% of the capacity of the event. Well, we have the ability to social distance in that environment. And how long are we going to have to facilitate that going forward? Is that into June and July? Is that permanently for a year or two until they figure out inoculations for this deal?
That is so crazy.
All those things. Each promoter is going to have to address that on a weekly basis. It's going to change.
And it's like you've got a staff for that, right? I mean, because what kind of impact is that going to have? We had a conversation a few weeks ago here on Burnout with Raleigh Miller, the owner of Darlington Dragway, and he, talked quite a bit about how he was working with local law enforcement agencies to bring deputies out and security to enforce these social distancing practices or whatever you would call it. I mean, is that something that you're having to kind of gear up for, Raleigh, to get people in place to make sure that people actually adhere to these guidelines?
First, you got to set the guideline for each one, and each venue is going to be different. Then you've got to figure out how to address that specific topic. How do I control this and not have my costs triple or quadruple my staffing?
Right.
And that's I mean, if you talk to Mike about this, that's my specialty is logistics and event management. And you got to figure out how to do that. If you start going hiring security guards, that's going to get expensive real quick in some venues. So you got to figure out how you're going to do that with your staff, what kind of staff you're going to bring in, what are their guidelines for them, and how much authority do they have, in that situation. So
it's a complicated situation just because you've got, we're writing the rules as we go along, right? There's no playbook you could open up and like, oh, look, these guys did it this way in 1975 and it worked. And, so you have to be quick on your feet, like Raleigh had said, to say, okay, this is our plan. This is a great strategy, but then be ready to move and change, whether it be politics, move that, fear, move it, or, in the moment of combat on the ground to be able to change and adapt.
Wild times, man. Well, Raleigh, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to get a little insight from the pros, someone who does this week in and week out. And I think we're praying for you guys. We want, this is a big thing for the sport of drag racing to try to get back to whatever the new normal will be in as short a order as possible. And we know that you have a massive task in front of you, and we wish you the best and hope you well, buddy.
Appreciate that, guys. Great show. Enjoyed being a part of it.
And that'll do it for this week's 5th episode of Burnout. Hold on real quick. Got the chutes out. We're coasting to a stop here. Man, what a day. I got to tell you, talking to Rickie Smith, talking to Cleetus McFarland, talking to Raleigh Miller. I love this wide swath we paint. We're talking to a lot of different people. We're going to all sorts of different corners of the drag racing world.
We're literally everything from talking about cruises all the way to talking about high horsepower cars with big name racers. I mean, I love seeing the wide diversity.
Don't forget about the electric motors.
True. Ooh.
Oh, now we're talking about electric cars, which I don't really want to do a whole lot more. Not a whole lot more. We can do a little bit more of it, but Mike, let's back off on that. And I think it was cool that
I vote to back off as well.
Keep it low.
And like Rickie Smith, he just expects everybody that watches Burnout to know exactly what the Pro Charger cars ran in Orlando. I mean, I just think it's cool because we have to fill everybody in that this guy's talking about the hardest core, highest level of door slammer drag racing. And then the next thing you know, we're talking about, pouring concrete to do burnouts with Cleetus McFarland. And I couldn't be more proud of what we're doing. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next week on Burnout.